troupe that goes around and does historical little vignettes on different gas lamp people, which is really fun if you've never seen it. So I'm going to go ahead and let Charlotte take it away here.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. And so this evening, in the eve of Memorial or Veterans Day, I'd like to take you on a tour of Mount Soledad National Veterans Museum. Well, here we are at Mount Soledad. It's 822 feet above sea level, and it has a wonderful 360-degree view looking all the way to Mexico, to the mountains to the north. Now, a little history. It was first used in 1914 as a memorial park. The Lindberghs used the mountain in mid-20s for glider flights. And there was a wooden cross with wire and plaster of Paris erected in the 1930s, later blew down, and then it was put up again by some of La Jolla citizens. It was a key position for military early warning system in World War II, and it's always been a very popular place for lovers to park. Now, we feel it's the only national veterans memorial of its kind, honoring all branches of the services, all ranks, also all veterans, living and deceased. Mount Soledad Memorial Association was created in 1952 by American Legion Point 275, and the construction of the memorial walls began in May 2000. The cross that's on top of the memorial was actually dedicated in 1954, and it was a Korean War memorial. You can see, it looks like all on flat land. Now here's our mission statement, which is basically honoring veterans who have served our country as both a unique registry of our military heritage and to educate the public on the contributions of military personnel throughout our nation's history. Phase 1 had 6 walls that hold 3,400 black granite plaques. Now the plaques each have a photo of the veteran, and the plaques are made in Fallbrook. They're sandblasted all at one time, and they use a aluminum oxide. It's ground up rubies, and it is a very fine grit. We have a large American flag that's lit now at night, so it can stay up all through the day and night. 23 bollards honoring community service organizations, and brick pavers honoring individuals who aren't veterans but want to support the memorial and deserve recognition. Phase 2 allowed 5 new walls facing the east for an additional 2,400 veterans plaques, and there are still close to 956 spaces left. I'm not sure what's going to happen after all these walls are filled, but that'll be left to be seen. All the walls and the memorial has been done by private funds, sale of plaques, membership, paver sales, and donations and grants. Here's a nice aerial view so you can see phase 1, they face the ocean, and this is phase 2 facing the east. Here's Highway 5 going north. Well, now we're going to visit some of the people on the plaques. We have Congressional Medal of Honor recipients, and this is Herman Henry Heineken, Brigadier General. He served in, as you can see, several different wars. And he was awarded the Medal of Honor when he assassinated the resistance leader of Haiti. And he was also awarded the Navy Cross. John Finn is a local resident. He was on duty when the Japanese decided to bomb Pearl Harbor. Well, John Finn wasn't on duty that day, but he heard the noise and he ran to the airfield and he picked up a machine gun and started to fire. He was wounded in his right arm, then he fired with his left arm, and he just stayed on the airfield until he couldn't fight any longer. He didn't think that he did anything special. He just said he was doing his job. Well, he was awarded the Medal of Honor, and he was supposed to have the award given to him by Admiral Chester Nimitz aboard the aircraft carrier Enterprise. And in the war days, women were not allowed on ships. So John Finn said, well, if my wife can't come aboard the ship to give me the medal, I don't want it. So as you can see here, she was allowed aboard the ship. Well, when they wanted to honor him with a plaque on Mount Soledad, he pulled the same card. He said, the rules had been that only veterans, husband and wife, could appear on the plaque together. So John said, well, if my wife can't be on the plaque, I don't want a plaque. So as you can see here, they bent the rules a little bit for John. He was the oldest living Medal of Honor recipient who died in 2010 at age 100. And this is John Baca from Vietnam, who fell on a grenade and saved several of his buddies. And as he was wounded the Medal of Honor, as he surveyed his wounds, he wondered if his mother would be angry at him because he told her he would stay in the background as opposed to going to the front, doing anything dangerous. And Baca and Finn came to very many of our veterans ceremonies, and I just love this picture of them together. Gregory Pappy Boynton, he was an American combat pilot who was a United States Marine Corps fighter ace during World War II. And he was known as Pappy or Gramps to his men since he was older than most of them. James von Stockdale was a local vice admiral, and he was shot down over North Vietnam in 1965 while he was commander of a carrier air wing aboard the U.S. Onoski. He was imprisoned in the Hanoi Hilton, and at that time he was the highest ranking naval officer ever held in a North Vietnamese prison. He endured over 7 years of routine torture. He spent 4 years in solitary confinement, and he slashed his scalp with a razor and masked his face with a stool to avoid being used for propaganda. He was allowed occasional letters from his family, and early on, a Red Cross letter arrived from Sybil Stockdale, and it contained a picture of his mother about to take a dip in the water. Well, the woman pictured wasn't his mother, and so Stockdale figured a dip in the water must be a code. And so after puzzling over it, he dipped the photo in liquid and a message emerged, and it was from the Navy intelligence asking about other POWs and instructing that any future photos that included roses contained an encrypted message. And so after that, the couple's correspondence continued with pictures of Sybil posing with roses in the background or holding a bouquet. Audie Murphy was the son of a poor Texas sharecropper. And he became actually a national hero during World War II as the most decorated combat soldier of the war. Among 33 awards, he was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor, and he was also decorated for bravery by the governments of France and Belgium. He received most of these decorations before he was 20 years old. He tried to enlist in the Army, but he was rejected because he was too young. And his sister helped him. He falsifies his age and he was accepted. He was slight and almost frail, only about 5 feet inches tall. And so in 1945, he was released from active duty, and his story caught the eye of James Cagney, who invited Murphy to Hollywood, where he made 45 American films, including the popular To Hell and Back, which was based on the book of the same name. In 1971, he was on board a private plane on his way to a business meeting when he ran into thick fog in Roanoke, Virginia, crashed into a mountain, killing all 6 aboard, and he was only 46 years old. He was buried with full military honors at Arlington Cemetery, and according to the cemetery records, the only graveside visited by more people than Murphy's was that of President Kennedy. Michael Monsieur received the Medal of Honor. He also, he was from a war in Iraq. He threw himself on a grenade, saving the life of 2 of his teammates. Jason Durham also was awarded the medal in an ambush where he covered the grenade with his helmet and body, resulting in his death. Well, we have presidents and world leaders. We have President Truman. During his first weeks as vice president, Henry Truman scarcely saw President Roosevelt, and he received no briefings as to the development of the atomic bomb or unfolding difficulties in Soviet Russia. And suddenly, these and a host of other wartime problems became Truman's to solve. So in 1945, he became president. He told reporters, "I feel like the moon, the stars, and the planets have all fallen on me." Dwight D. Eisenhower, 34th president, general of the Army of the United States. He was a master craftsman of the art of leadership. And he rose from a relatively obscure Army officer in 1940 to the Supreme Allied Commander, leading the US and Allied forces to free Europe during World War II. Winston Churchill was placed on the wall when he was such a help to the United States when they entered the war. He was World War I, and also he was prime minister in World War II, and he became the first person to be recognized as an honorary citizen of the United States. I just watched the movie, The Darkest Hour, about his part in the war, which I found very interesting, about how he did not want to give up. And here his theme, never, never, never give up. Ronald Reagan, recognize him, served as the 40th president. Before he was a Hollywood actor and a union leader before serving as the 33rd governor of California. And here's Gerald Ford. We usually would pick somebody to honor at each one of the Veterans or the Memorial Day ceremonies. And Gerald Ford was honored, and his son and family came to the ceremony. And they usually have a facsimile of the plaque. So here they are at the unveiling of Gerald Ford's plaque. We have famous commanders of all times. And John Joseph Blackjack Pershing, General of the Army of the United States. And you can see here all the wars that he was in. Now, his military career included a stint with the University of Nebraska, which I always like that because I'm from Nebraska, and was once the nation's best-known military commander. Well, after he led the U.S. forces in World War I, he was honored as the highest-ranking general in the history of the U.S. Army till his death in 1948. He was the first white officer to command African-American soldiers in the 10th Cavalry. In 1897, Pershing became an instructor at West Point. And the cadets there were upset because he had very harsh treatment of them and high standards, and they took to calling him, well, the N-word, Jack, in reference to his service with the 10th Cavalry, which were the black soldiers. This was softened to Blackjack by reporters covering Pershing in World War I. In 1898, he led the 10th Cavalry, one of the original Buffalo Soldiers Regiment, up San Juan Hill in Cuba during the Spanish-American War. And in 1915, he was patrolling the Mexican border and looking for Pancho Villa. After World War I, he was promoted to General of the Armies, and he was a mentor to a generation of U.S. Army generals including George Patton, Dwight Eisenhower, George Marshall, and Omar Bradley. And just a bit of trivia, here are the Buffalo Soldiers. And there's a little controversy of how they got their name. Some say that the nickname was given out of respect for the fierce fighting ability of the 10th Cavalry. Others assess that the Native Americans called the Black Cavalry troops Buffalo Soldiers because of their dark curly hair, which resembled a buffalo coat. And they've come to some of our ceremonies. Here's George Patton. He's been called a number of things, including genius, a legend, a real SOB, and almost 50 years after his death, he's still considered to be the one U.S. Army general epitomizing the fighting soldiers of World War II. William Halsey is from La Jolla, and he was one of the first people to have a plaque on Mount Soledad. He was a naval commander in the Pacific Theater during World War II. And here his son, Bill, also from La Jolla, was also in World War II. We have celebrities on the wall. Glenn Miller, big band trombonist, composer, and he was the best-selling recording artist from 1939 to 1942. Next to A Letter from Home, the Glenn Miller Band was the greatest morale builder during World War II. Glenn's plane went down across the English Channel and his body was never recovered. His daughter lived in La Jolla, and she said, well, this is the place that I can be close to my dad since there is no gravesite. Brigadier General James Stewart was the first movie star to join the service in World War II. Now, he entered the Army in 1941. He served overseas for 21 months, and he did 20 combat missions. He held the highest active military rank of any actor in history. And although he served in World War II and Korea, he was always very low-key about his military career, downplaying it in interviews when they were discussing his acting career. Bob Hope, first honorary veteran of the United States by act of Congress. I'm sure you all know how much Bob enjoyed entertaining the troops through all these wars from World War II up to Desert Storm. Thanks for the memories. Wally Scherer, he was U.S. Navy captain. Then he joined the NASA space program, and he was one of the original Mercury 7 astronauts chosen for Project Mercury. And he was the only person to fly in all America's first 3 space programs. He served the final months of World War II aboard the battleship USS Alaska. And he trained as a pilot. And at the outbreak of the Korea War, he was dispatched again on loan to the US Air Force. Excuse me. Louis Zamperini is a true American hero with a life story so inspirational it became a book called Unbroken, and then it became a movie. He was actually a juvenile delinquent. He was a street fighter, a gang member, all-around petty thief, and his older brother got him on the right track as a runner. And so he earned a trip to the 1936 Berlin Olympics. Well, he enlisted in the Army Air Corps and was sent to Hawaii. And on a search and rescue mission, his plane lost power, crashed into the Pacific, killing 8 of 11 on board. Louis and 2 crewmates drifted on 2 tiny rafts, starving and wasting away for 47 days. They were drinking rainwater and eating fish and birds they caught with their bare hands. They were spotted by the Japanese and taken prisoner, and for the next 2 years, he was beaten and tortured. But Louis would not be broken. We have people representing all of our wars. Revolutionary War. Moses Martin, I don't know too much about him. Matthew Coleman, Both fought in the Revolutionary War, here Battle of the Bunker Hill and the Boston Tea Party. Mexican-American War, U.S. Grant also fought in the Civil War and became the president. He retired from the Army after the Mexican-American War and then re-enlisted in the Civil War. We have our hotel in San Diego named after USS Grant. Levi Fairchild, American Civil War, participated in several campaigns, and his unit joined Sherman's famous March to the Sea. And we have the Bailey brothers. One fought for the Union, the other fought for the Civil War. And so they're on the wall, not together, but I think facing each other. And Spanish-American War, Theodore Roosevelt, who was awarded the Medal of Honor for his assault in Cuba on San Juan Hill. He was a true American statesman. He was an explorer, a soldier. He's been establishing the U.S. Forest Service, 5 national parks, set forth the process to build the Panama Canal, and the teddy bears named after him.
Nice to see you again.
Yeah.
Thanks.
World War I, and this happens to be my dad. And he graduated from high school in 1918 and enlisted in the Army. Well, he went for his basic training and the war was over, so he never made it out of Nebraska. So he went back home to North Platte, Nebraska. But I thought he deserved a plaque because his intentions were honorable, that he planned to go, just the way things worked out. Well, he also, here he is down in the bottom, as a senior citizen, Walter, age 85, he joined some other senior citizens. They were all practically in their 80s and 90s, and they formed a military group that would go to Fort McPherson National Cemetery and give a gun salute to veterans who were buried there. I have to tell you a story about this. We have docents up at the memorial, and the docent was telling me he showed my dad's plaque, and he said, "Oh, I have this little doughboy here. He's standing in front of a French chateau in France." And I said, no, he's standing in front of Cotner College in Lincoln, Nebraska. So the docent said, "Well, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it." So there's my dad in France. Not really. I don't know too much about this nurse, but I just thought she was so sweet that I had to put her in this presentation. And World War II, Dory Miller. He was a mess attendant. Grew up in Waco, Texas. He was about 6'3" tall and weighed 200 pounds. And he was on the battleship West Virginia in Pearl Harbor. And he ignored the rules to abandon ship. And also he disobeyed the law that prohibited Black servicemen from firing weapons. He was 22 years old, and he manned a deserted machine gun and helped knock up about 6 attacking planes. He described firing the machine gun that he had no training on. He said, "Well, it wasn't hard. I just pulled the trigger and she worked fine. I'd watched other people with these guns, and I guess I just fired her about 15 minutes. I think I got one of those Japanese planes." Less than 2 years later, Miller would die on another battleship, one sunk by the Japanese in the South Pacific. He was awarded a Navy Cross, and in 1973, the Navy paid tribute by commissioning a ship for him. He also got a stamp, but many felt that he should have been awarded the Medal of Honor, and he was probably passed over because of his race. But his bravery did lead journalists and members of Congress and civil rights activists to call for greater opportunities and better treatment and higher honors for Black service members. And here's one of the cavalry members that went from cavalry to guerrilla commander, Edwin Ramsey, World War II. And this is actually the husband of one of my friends, Leonard Teshier. He lives here in La Jolla. And again, I just thought this was just such a nice picture. He just out of high school. In fact, he said, I signed up with the Navy when I was a junior at Sweetwater High to be a 90-day wonder. I became an officer in 90 days. And he said, but I spent most of my daytime decommissioning ships on the Waldo River in Charleston, North Carolina, and the evening entertaining the Southern Belles at the USO. He's still alive. He's in his 90s, but here he is as a young sailor. Bill Malden, he spent his time during World War II drawing cartoons for the Stars and Stripes military newspaper. And you can see Willie and Joe. Malden then actually was 23 and he won a Pulitzer Prize, and he was featured on the cover of Time magazine. He got his book up front was a #1 bestseller. He got a stamp also. But an interesting little story. Sometimes his cartoons cut too close for comfort, and the superior officers tried to tone him down. In fact, once he enraged General George Patton, and Patton informed Malden that he wanted those pointed cartoons celebrating fighting men and lampooning the high-rating officers to stop now. Well, the news passed from soldier to soldier. How was Sergeant Bill Malden going to stand up to General Patton? It seemed impossible. Not quite. Malden turned out had an ardent fan. 5-star General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Commander. So General Eisenhower put out the word, Malden draws what Malden wants. So Malden won, Patton lost. Pete Butcher, he's actually was the commander of the ship Pueblo. It's a spy ship. It was captured in North Korea, and he and his crew were beaten and tortured for 11 months before they were released. Butcher was born in Pocatello, Idaho, and he was given up for adoption by his birth mother. And he was raised by family members, and then he drifted through a series of orphanages. And he read a magazine article about Father Flanagan's Boys Town in Omaha, Nebraska. So he wrote Father Flanagan a letter, and he was surprised when Father Flanagan wrote back. And he was accepted in the summer of 1941, and for the rest of his life, he considered Boys Town to be his home. This is a friend of mine. He served 20 years, and actually he was a Navy doctor and just happened to be stationed in Coronado when they formed the SEAL Team 1. And so he was assigned to be the medical officer for the SEAL team, and he was trained. He wasn't a SEAL, but he did do training with the SEAL, and he went to Vietnam with them. And he said, boy, some of the things they did there were pretty scary. And this is, I want to show a little private that was also killed in action in Vietnam. War against terrorism, Jeremy and Barrow, they almost always bring tears to my eyes. 2 high school friends enlisted together, they were killed together, and they're on the walls together. It says, together always, strength and honor. The Hubbards also lost another son in the Black Hawk helicopter crash. And we honored Tyrone Woods and Glenn Dowry, 2 former Navy SEALs who were killed in Libya at the embassy. Their bravery saved the lives of more than 20 staff members. Marcus Luttrell, some of you may have read the book or seen the movie, The Lone Survivor. He was a Navy SEAL in Iraq, and they were on a mission to look for Taliban, and they saw some goat herders. And so they let the goat herders go, and then next thing they knew, the Taliban had surrounded them, and they all were killed except for Marcus Luttrell, and he survived because they thought he was dead. And so here's his plaque. He wrote the book in the movie, The Lone Survivor. Also, Michael Murphy, he doesn't have a plaque on Mount Soledad, but he was the officer in charge, and he radioed for help. And when the was Operation Red Hawk, the plane was shot down, and Michael Murphy and all these people listed here on this group plaque perished. We have women on our walls. Jeanette Holmes. She rose from an Army truck driver in World War II to Air Force's first female general. And shortly after she retired in 1975, the Air Force announced that women would be trained as pilots, something that had been resisted. She died in 2010 at the age of 88. I belong to the DAR in La Jolla, and we had a member who was a Coast Guard reserve, so I thought our chapter should put her on the wall. So here she is, Lorraine Vivian Briggs, the DAR. Two other women, I don't know too much about them, but there they are. And Jeanette Lee Winters, she was killed in Operation Enduring Freedom. She was stationed here at Miramar. And when her plaque was put on the wall, all of her whole squadron came in their dress uniforms to honor her. She was actually the first female member of the U.S. military to be killed in combat since 1991, the Gulf War. Lori Piesca, the wrong turn in the desert when Jessica Lynch's convoy veered off at course in Iraq. She was the first Native American woman to die in combat on foreign soil. She was born in Yuba City, Arizona. Her father was a Hopi Native American, and her mother was Mexican American. She has a peak named after her in Phoenix. And I happened to be up at the memorial when Marjorie Eastman had just had her plaque put up, and she was so pleased. She had her little daughter there, and she was showing her plaque. And I thought that was really very nice. Army Reserve, she served in Iraq and Afghanistan. We have husband and wives on our plaques, on our walls. This is Darcy and Al Pavage. They met in the Navy, and Darcy has been the chaplain at Veterans Village, San Diego, and she's also the stand down coordinator. She's received numerous awards from the DAR, and she's also the San Diego's Veteran of the Year in 2003. The Feldmans, actually you might notice that Camilla, she was a lieutenant, and Leo was enlisted. And they weren't supposed to be fraternizing, but he pretended to be her driver, but he was actually courting her. Here's another husband and wife on our walls. Local residents, Gerald Ford, Jerry Coleman. He was the Padres broadcaster, the only Major League Baseball player to see combat in 2 wars. And as a Marine Corps aviator, he served 120 combat missions and received numerous awards. And he resisted having a plaque because he kept saying, oh, the plaques were just for dead people. But finally, he said that he'd like to have a plaque. And here he is before he died at one of the ceremonies. Cliff Robertson, his heart will always reside in La Jolla. World War II, also movie star, portrayed JFK in PT 109. And this is Wolf Forrester. He lives here in La Jolla. He grew up in Berlin under the reign of Hitler, and he had 2 dreams. One was to live in America, and one was to be a doctor. And so he was called to service as a German soldier in the final months of World War II, and he was captured by the Allies, held as a POW. Well, finally, almost after 2 years after the end of the war, he gained his freedom. He became a noted radiologist and inside the power circles of Washington, D.C., and he went on to serve as a colonel in the U.S. Army. So he wrote a book, his memoirs, called Farewell Berlin. He's still alive, living here in La Jolla. And this is the Scripps. Actually, William Scripps, he's the one that started Mount Soledad Memorial Association. And this is his son. And I don't know, you may know Bill Kellogg is a tennis player, and he was the president of Mount Soledad for many, many years. Now, Bill Kellogg was never a veteran, but he got involved because his grandfather, William Scripps Kellogg, asked him to come to a meeting. And so he went to this meeting, and from then on, he was involved with Mount Soledad, just helped, did a very lot for the organization. Oh, Doug Barnett, he was a La Jollan that was in Iwo Jima, and his son was also a Marine. And this is my neighbor, Ryan Iron Ed Heiner. He's still alive and well. He was a decorated Navy SEAL. He did 20 years. He was among the most experienced trainers in Navy SEAL history, having trained and qualified thousands of Navy SEALs. Now he's become an author. He wrote a book, First, Fast, and Fearless, and he just came out with a new book called Guts, G-U-T-S, Greatness Under Tremendous Stress, Navy SEALs System for Turning Fear into Accomplishment. So he's always running around the neighborhood. Every day you'll see him out training, running up and down the hills. Alan Malinsky, he's the head of the Jewish War Veterans. And he always is telling his Jewish War veterans that we need more Stars of David on the walls. And he was never offended by the cross during all the controversy over the cross on Mount Soledad. And this is the Hopkins family. And I knew this Hope Coleman. She was a teacher with that I knew through education. And she had 11 brothers who all served in the military, which was rather unique because not everybody would have 11 brothers, all serving during, 8 served during World War II. They were scattered across the country and around the world. One brother was shot down over France and captured, and he came home safely. In fact, they all came home safely. 3 other brothers served in the Korean War and the Cold War in the 1950s. So she wanted to honor her brothers, and the rules were that you could only have their names on one. Well, there wouldn't have been room for 11 pictures on one plaque, actually. So she purchased a plaque for all 11 brothers, plus her husband, Bob, and her son. And so she had her own little memorial here, the Hopkins family. And here are the 11 brothers and their plaques. And here this is Hope right here in the middle. And this was at the Veterans Honor Ceremony when they put her plaques, her memorial on the wall. Our docents there, I just had one docent that spent a lot of time up there. So she told me, she said, well, you know, I look at these plaques day after day and tell people about them. And she says, I think this is the most handsome veteran on the wall. So here he is, Robert Enziger, most handsome man on the wall. We have special events honoring Memorial Day, Veterans Day, Veterans Honor Ceremonies. We've had weddings, motorcycle rallies, all kinds of things going on. In fact, this Saturday, November 13th, we'll be celebrating Veterans Day at the memorial. This year, they're honoring the Navy Corps of the Nurses Corps of Army, Navy, and Air Force. And so they'll be unveiling a plaque for the nurses, and there'll be music and a flyover. If you'd like to attend the ceremony, it's free. It's from 12 to 1. And usually there's Old Town Trolley will give rides, park at the church right off Soledad Mountain Road. And Old Town Trolley will take you up to the memorial. We have generally a gun salute, military flags. It's really a lovely day. Here's Jerry Coleman. We were honoring him. Here's the flyover. And this was the widows of Glenn Dowry and the people who were killed in Benghazi, accepting their plaques. One of our docents. And so tell your friends about the Veterans Memorial at Mount Soledad. We have a website. If you have somebody that you want to look up their plaque, there's a plaque locator. It'll show you what their plaque looks like and tell you where it is on the wall. So Mount Soledad's remembering our nation's veterans. God bless America.